Unit 2, Lesson 1, Exchange Rate System, Gold Standard, Bretton Woods, Fixed versus Floating Exchange Rate System Objectives. After studying this lesson, you should be able to understand various monetary systems have been in practice from time to time, to know about gold standard and its implications in international monetary environment, to know about Bretton Woods system and its implication in international monetary environment, to know the differences between fixed and floating exchange rate system. Structure 1.1 Introduction 1.2 Exchange Rate System 1.3 Gold Standard 1.4 Bretton Woods 1.5 Fixed versus Floating Exchange Rate System 1.6 Summary 1.7 Glossary 1.8 Self-Assessment Question 1.9 Further Readings 1.1 Introduction. The increased volatility of exchange rate is one of the main economic developments of recent past. Under the current system of partly floating and partly fixed exchange rates, the earnings of multinational firms, banks, and individual investors have been subjected to significant real and paper fluctuation as a result of changes in a relative exchange rate. Although volatile exchange rates may increase risk, they also create profit opportunity for both firms and investors. Given a proper understanding of exchange rate management, the international monetary system can be defined as the structure within which foreign exchange rates are determined, international trade and capital flows are accommodated, and balance of payments adjustment made. It also includes all the instruments, institutions, and agreements that link together the world's currency, money markets, security, real estate, and commodity markets. 1.2 Exchange Rate System. Over the ages, currencies have been defined in terms of gold and other items of value, and the international monetary system has been subject to a variety of international agreements. A brief history of this system provides useful perspective against which to compare today's system and to evaluate weaknesses and propose changes in the present system. In the following section, various monetary standards that were in practice since 19th century are briefly explained. The international monetary system has been involved historically from the gold standard 1876-1913 of fixed exchange rates to the interwars and World War II 1914-1944 with floating exchange rate to fixed exchange rate 1945-1973 under the Bretton Woods Agreement to the present electric currency arrangement 1973%. Of fixed, floating, and managed exchange rate. In the following section, an attempt has been made to explain them briefly for understanding of their significance in international monetary environment.
1.3 The Gold Standard 1876-1913. A system of setting currency values whereby the participating countries commit to fix the prices of their domestic currencies in terms of a specified amount of gold. The gold standard as an international monetary system gained acceptance in Western Europe in the 1870s. The gold United States was something of a latecomer to the system, not officially adopting the standard until 1879. The rules of the game under the gold standard were clear and simple. Each country set the rate at which its currency, paper or coin, could be converted to a weight of gold. The United States, for example, declared the dollar to be convertible to gold at a rate of $20.67 ounce of gold, a rate in effect until the beginning of World War I. The British pound was fixed at 4.2474 ounces of gold as long as both currencies were freely convertible into gold. The dollar-pound exchange rate was $20.67 ounce of gold, $4,8665 4.2474 ounce of gold because the government of each country on the gold standard agreed to buy or sell gold on demand to anyone at its own fixed parity rate, the value of each individual currency in terms of gold, and therefore the fixed parities between currencies was set. Under this system, it was very important for a country to maintain adequate reserve of gold to back its currency value. The system also had the effect of implicitly limiting the rate at which any individual country could expand its money supply. The growth in money was limited to the rate at which additional gold could be acquired by official authorities. The gold standard worked adequately until the outbreak of World War I interrupted trade flows and the free movement of gold. This caused the main trading nations to spend the operation of the gold standard 1.3.1 advantage of gold standard. Several advantages are claimed for the gold standard, especially when it's adopted simultaneously by a number of countries, i.e. international gold standard. It is an objective system and it is not subject to changing policy of the government or the whims of the currency authorities. Gold standard enables the country to maintain the purchasing power of its currency over long periods. This is so because the currency and credit structure is ultimately based on gold and possession of the currency authority. Another important advantage claimed for gold standard is that it preserves and maintains the external value of the currency rate of exchange within narrow limits. As a matter of fact, within the gold standard system, it provides fixed exchanges, which is a great boon to trader and investor. International division of labor is greatly facilitated. It gives, in fact, all the advantages of a common international currency. It establishes an international measure of value. As Marshall pointed out before the Fowler Committee report on Indian currency in 1898, the change to a gold basis is like a movement towards bringing the railway bridge on the side branches of the world railway into unison with the main line. The greatly facilitates foreign trade because fluctuation in rates of exchange hamper international trade. It is further claimed the gold standard helps to adjust the balance of payments between countries automatically. How this happens may be illustrated by a simple example. Suppose England and America are both on gold standard and only trade with each other, and that the balance of payments is due from England to America. Gold will be exported from England to America. The Bank of England will lose gold. This will contract currency is in England and bring about a fall in the British price level. Price level in America will rise due to larger reserves and the expansion of currency credit. England will become a good market to buy from a bad market to sell in. Conversely, America will become a good market to sell in a bad market to buy from. British export will be encouraged and import discouraged. American export will be discouraged and imports encouraged. The balance of payment will tend to move on favor of Britain until equilibrium is reached. It is this way the movement of gold by affecting prices and trade keep equilibrium among gold standard countries. 132. Disadvantage of gold standard. Gold standard is costly and the cost is unnecessary. We only want a medium of exchange. Why should it be made of gold? It is a luxury. The yellow metal could tickle the fancy or savage only. Even the value of gold has not been found to be absolutely stable over long periods. Under the gold standard, currency cannot be expanded in response to the requirements of trade. The supply of currency depends on the supply of gold, but the supply of gold depends on the success of the mining operation, which may have nothing to do with the factors affecting the growth of trade and industry in the country. Gold standard has also been charged with sacrificing internal stability to external exchange stability. It is the international aspect of the gold standard which has been paid more attention to. Another disadvantage is that under gold standard, gold movements lead to changes in interest rates so that the investment is stimulated or checked solely in order to expand or reduce money income. A country on a gold standard cannot follow an independent policy. In order to maintain the gold standard or to restore it is in England after World War I. It may had to deflate its currency against its will-be deflation, spell ruin to the economy of country. It brings in its wake large-scale unemployment, closing of works, and untold suffering attendant on Depression 133. Causes of the breakdown of the gold standard. The gold standard broke down country after country soon after its rehabilitation during the post-1914-18 war decade. There are several reasons for this development. 1. Gold was very unevenly distributed among the countries in the interwar period. While the USA and France came to possess the bulk of it, other countries did not have enough to maintain a monetary system based in gold. Number 2. Owing to general political unsettlement, a habit arose on the part of certain continental countries to keep their funds for short periods in foreign central banks, especially in Great Britain. These funds were liable to be withdrawn at the earliest danger signal. Withdrawal of such funds from Britain on the part of France led to the gold standard being suspended in 1931 in the former country. The Bank of England could not afford to lose its gold resources in large quantities at such a short notice. Number 3. International trade was not free. Some countries often imposed stringent restriction on import with payments problem for other countries. Not having enough gold to cover the gap, they threw the gold standard overboard. This especially happened during the Great Depression of early 30s. Number 4. International obligation in the form of reparation and war debts arose out of World War I. Since the creditor countries refused to accept payments in the form of goods and also refused to continue lending to the debtors, countries of debt had to be cleared through gold movements. This led to concentration of 34% of the world's gold in the USA and France, the two chief creditor countries. The gold left with the other countries was not enough to enable them to maintain gold standard successfully. Number 5. The gold receiving countries did not play the game of the gold standard. They, especially the USA, did not allow this gold to have any effect on their price level. The gold was sterilized or made ineffective. Had prices risen in these countries, import would have been encouraged and export discouraged, and unfavorable balance of trade would have led to movement of gold the reverse direction. Since this was not allowed to happen, the gold standard failed to work automatically. Number 6. Gold standard failed also because the economic structure of the countries concerned had become less and less elastic after the World War of 1914 to 18. This was due to several reasons. The enormous growth in the indebtedness of governments and local authorities result in a mass of interest payment fixed by the contract over a long period of years. The high expenditure in the form of payment to social services could not be easily reduced. The trade unions were now able to offer a much stronger resistance to wage cut than before 1914. The prices of raw materials and finished goods were becoming more and more fixed by partial monopolies, cartel agreements, etc. The result was that prices no longer moved in the direction warranted by gold movements, and equilibrium failed to be restored as of old. Number 7. Another weakness that was discovered in the gold standard in practice was that it was always liable to collapse in a crisis. It has often been called a fair weather standard only. Number 8. Another objection that was frequently urged against the system was that gold movement caused inconvenient changes in interest rate deflation of the standard, but deflation which involves falling wage and prices may prove a cause of serious trouble. Wage cuts are resisted by trade unions, and falling prices increase the burden of fixed payments which the government or the people may have to make. Moreover, falling prices discourage enterprise and create unemployment. A large volume of short-term capital was moving safely from one financial center to another. Big flows of the hot money necessitate large gold movements which the slender gold reserves of countries could not maintain. Hence, gold standard was given up. Thus, it was that country after country abandoned the gold standard in the interwar period 1914-1944.
1.4 Bretton Woods 1944. In 1944, as World War II drew toward a close, the Allied powers met at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, in order to create a new war international monetary system. The Bretton Woods Agreement, implemented in 1946, whereby each member government pledged to maintain a fixed or pegged exchange rate for its currency vis-a-vis the dollar or gold. This fixed exchange rate were supposed to reduce the weaknesses of international transactions, thus promoting growth in world trade. The Bretton Woods Agreement established US dollar-based international monetary system and provide for two new institutions, the IMF and the World Bank. The IMF aids countries which balance of payment and exchange rate problem. The International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, World Bank, helped post-war reconstruction and since then has supported general economic development. The IMF was the key institute in the new international monetary system, and it has remained to so that present. The IMF was established to render temporary assistance to member countries trying to defend currencies against cyclical, seasonal, or random occurrences. It also assists countries have structural trade problems if they take adequate steps to correct their problems.
However, if resistance deficit occur, the IMF cannot save a country from eventual devaluation. In recent years, it has attempted to help countries facing financial crisis. It has provided massive loans as well as advice to Russia and other former Russian republics, Brazil, Indonesia, and South Korea, to name but a few. Under the original provision of the Bretton Woods Agreement, all countries fixed the value of their currencies for gold. Only the dollar remained convertible into gold at $35 for once. Therefore, each country decided what each wished its exchange rate to be vis-a-vis the dollar and then calculate the gold per value of its currency to create the desired dollar exchange rate. Participating countries agreed to try to maintain the value of their currencies within 1%. Later expanded to 1/4%, or far by buying or selling foreign exchange or gold as needed. Devaluation was not to be used as a competitive trade policy, but if a currency became too weak to defend, a devaluation up to 10% was allowed without formal approval by the IMF. Larger devaluations required IMF approval. 1.41 The Special Drawing Rights (SDRS), the Bretton Woods, also known as IMF, system was an improvement on the gold standard. The IMF system had all the merits of the gold standard minus its demerits. It ensured exchange stability without the country having to undergo the expense of maintaining a costly currency system. The under IMF system, exchange parities were fixed in the gold, but it was unnecessary to keep large gold reserves for currency purposes. Besides gold, stock currency output were utterly inadequate to meet the requirements of over-expanding volume of international trade, thus giving rise to the serious problem of international liquidity. The IMF sought to provide multilateralism. The IMF could facilitate foreign exchange transactions, and there was no need to export gold to meet the trade deficit. It also facilitated convertibility of currencies and provide adequate and convenient currency reserve for the use of member countries. However, fast-changing circumstances are necessitate changes in the IMF system. In September 1967, the board governor approved plan for a new type of international asset known as the SDR, Special Drawing Rights. SDR is an international reserve asset created by the IMF to supplement existing foreign exchange reserves. It serves as a unit of account, the IMF and other international regional organizations, and it also the base against which some countries peg the rate of exchange for their currencies. Defined initially in terms of a fixed quantity of gold, the SDR has been defined several times. It is currently the weight value of currencies of the 5 IMF members having the largest export of goods and services. Individual countries hold SDRs in the form of deposit in the IMF. These holdings are part of each country's international monetary reserves along with official holding of gold foreign exchange and its reserve position at the IMF. Members may settle transactions among themselves by the transferring SDRs. Under SIM, the IMF is empowered to allocate to various member countries SDRs on a specified basis, which in effect amount to raising the limit to which a member country can draw from the IMF in time of needs. Besides, the SDRs supplement gold, dollar, and pounds sterling. Most countries use a monetary reserve. They can be used unconditionally by the participating countries to meet their liabilities, and they are not backed by gold. They are meant to be used by the central bank of the fund's member countries. With the SDRS, the central banks can buy whatever currencies they need for settling their balance and payments deficit. The resources of the new SEM are not a pool of currencies but simply the obligation of participating members to accept the SDRS for settlement of payments between them. Thus, SDRS serve as an international money as a good other reserve currencies but a nicely and diligently built up system of exchange stability by the IMF collapsed like a house of cards. This was caused by the dollar crisis created by the adverse American balance of payments. Among the measures taken by the American administration, there was one which linked dollar from gold. The linking of dollar from gold knocked out the very foundation of the IMF. In January 1975, the IMF abolished the official price of gold and SDRS have instead become the base of present international monetary standard. The SDRS are not convertible into gold. That is why alternative present standard may also be referred to as paper gold standard. 5. Fixed versus floating exchange rate system. 1.5.1 Fixed exchange rates. 1945-1973. The currency arrangement negotiated at Bretton Woods and monitored by the IMF worked fairly where during the post-World War II period of reconstruction and rapid growth in world trade. However, widely diverging national monetary and fiscal policies, differential rates of inflation, and various unexpected external shocks eventually result in the system demise. The US dollar was the main reserve currency held by central bank and was the key to the web of exchange rate values. Unfortunately, the United States ran persistent and growing deficits on its balance of payments. A heavy capital outflow of dollar was required to finance this deficit and to meet the growing demand for dollar from investors and businesses. Eventually, the heavy overhang of dollars held abroad resulted in a lack of confidence in the ability of the United States to meet its commitment to convert dollars to gold. On August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon was forced to suspend official purchases or sales of gold by the U.S. Treasury after the United States suffered outflows of roughly one-third of its official gold reserves in the first 7 months of the year. Exchange rate of most of the leading trading countries were allowed to float in relation to the dollar and thus indirectly in relation to gold. By the end of 1971, most of the major trading currencies had appreciated vis-a-vis the dollar. This change was in effect and devaluation of the dollar. In early 1973, the US dollar came under attack once again, thereby forcing a second devaluation on February 12, 1973, this time by 10% to $42.22 per ounce. By late February 1973, a fixed rate system no longer appeared feasible given the speculative flows and currencies. The major foreign exchange markets were actually closed for several weeks in March 1973. When they reopened, most currencies were allowed to float to levels determined by the market forces. Par values were left unchanged. The dollar had floated downward an average of 10% by June 1973. 1.52. An electric currency arrangement 1973%. Since March 1973, exchange rates have become much more volatile and less predictable than they were during the fixed exchange rate period. When changes occurred, frequently In a general, dollar has been volatile and has weakened somewhat over the long run. On the other hand, the Japanese yen and German mark have strengthened. The emerging market currencies have been exceptionally volatile and have generally weakened. In the wake of the collapse of the Bretton Woods exchange rate system, the IMF appointed the Committee of 20 which suggested various options for the exchange rate arrangement. These suggestions were approved at Jamaica during February 1976 and were formally incorporated into the text of the second amendment to the Articles of Agreement, which came into force from April 1978. The options were broadly: 1. Floating independent and managed; 2. Hedging of currency; 3. Crawling peg; 4. Target zone arrangement; 5. Others. 1. Floating rate system. In a floating rate system, it is the market forces that determine the exchange rate between two currencies. The advocates of the floating rate system put forth two major arguments. One is that the exchange rate varies automatically according to the changes in the macroeconomic variables. As a result, there is no gap between the real exchange rate and the nominal exchange rate. The country does not need any adjustment, which is often required in a fixed rate regime, and so it does not have to bear the cost of adjustment. The other argument is that this system possesses insulation properties, meaning that the currency remains isolated from the shocks emanating from other countries. It also means the government can adopt an independent economic policy without impinging upon the external sector performance. In case of managed floating with no pre-announced path for the exchange rate, the monetary authority influences the movements of the exchange rate through active intervention in the foreign exchange market without specifying or pre-committing to a pre-announcing path for the exchange rate. In case independent floating, the exchange rate is market determined with any foreign exchange intervention aimed at moderating the rate change and preventing undue fluctuation in the exchange rate rather than at establishing a level for it. 2. Hedging of currency. Normally, a developing country pegs its currency to a strong currency or to a currency with which it conducts a very large part of its trade. Hedging involves fixed exchange rate with the result that trade payments are stable, but in case of trading with other countries, stability cannot be guaranteed. This is why hedging to a single currency is not advised if the current country's trade is diversified. In such cases, hedging to a basket of currencies is advised. But if the basket is very large, multi-currency intervention may prove costly. Hedging to SDR is not different insofar as the value of the SDR itself is hedged to a basket of 5 currency. Number 3. Crawling peg. Again, a few countries have a system of crawling peg. Under this system, they allow the peg to change gradually over time to catch up with changes in the market. Determine rates. It is a hybrid of fixed rate and flexible rate system. So this system avoids too much of instability and too much of rigidity in some of the countries opting for the crawling peg. Crawling bonds are maintained within which the value of currency is maintained. The currency is adjusted periodically in small amounts at a fixed pre-announced rate or in response to change in selective quantitative indicators. Number 4. Target zone arrangement. In the target zone arrangement, the intra-zone exchange rate are fixed. An opposite example of such an arrangement was found in European Monetary Union (EMU). Before coming in of euro, however, there are cases where the member countries of a currency union do not have their own currency. Rather, they had a common currency. Under this group come the member countries of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, the Western African Economic and Monetary Union, and the Central African Economic and Monetary Community. The member currencies of the European Monetary Union came under this group with the euro substituting the currency in 2002. Number 5. Others. Apart from the model discussed above, there do different countries followed some more practices. They are A. Currency board arrangement, a monetary regime based on an implicit legislative command to exchange domestic currency for a specified foreign currency at a fixed exchange rate, combined with restriction on the issuing authority to ensure the fulfillment of its legal obligation. B. Dollarization. Several countries that have suffered for many years from currency devaluation primarily as a result of inflation have taken steps toward dollarization, the use of US dollar as the official currency of the country. 153. Fixed versus flexible exchange rate. A nation choice as to which currency regime it follows reflects national priorities about all facets of the microeconomy, including inflation, unemployment, interest rate levels, trade balances, and economic growth. The choice between fixed and flexible rates may then change as priorities change. At the risk of overgeneralization, the following observation is explain why countries pursue certain exchange rate regimes. They are based on the premise that other things being equal, countries would prefer fixed exchange rates. Number 1. Fixed rates provide stability in international prices for the conduct of trade. Stable prices aid in the growth of international trade and lessen risk for all businesses. Number 2. Fixed exchange rates are inherently anti-inflationary, requiring the country to follow restrictive monetary and fiscal policies. This restrictiveness, however, can often be a burden to a country wishing to pursue policies that alleviate continuing internal economic problems such as high unemployment or slow economic growth. The recent developments in the field of international monetary environment are worth mentioning. The airlines of euro as the single currency for 11 of European countries and the currency crisis in emerging markets. They are briefly mentioned below. A. The launch of euro. On January 1, 1999, 11 member states of EU imitate the European Monetary Union. They established a single currency, the euro, which replaced the individual currencies for the participating member states on December 31, 1998. The final fixed rates between the 11 participating currencies and the euro were put into place on January 4, 1999. The euro was officially traded. The 15 members of European Union are also members of the European monetary system. According to the EU, EMU is a single currency area known informally as the Eurozone within the EU single market in which people, goods, services, and capital move without restriction. In December 1991, the members of the European Union met at Maastricht, the Netherlands, and concluded as a treaty that changed Europe's currency future. The Maastricht Treaty specified a timetable and a plan to replace all individual currencies with a single currency, now called the euro. Other steps were adopted that would lead to a full European Economic and Monetary Union. The growth of global market and increasing competitiveness of the Americas and Asia drove the member of the EU in 1980s and 1990s to take action that would allow their residents and their firms to compete globally. The reduction of barriers across all members of countries to allow economics of scale, size, and cost per unit, and a scope horizontal and vertical integration was thought to be Europe's only hope of not being left behind in the new millennium. The successful implementation of a single strong and dependable currency for the conduct of life could well alter the traditional dominance of the US dollar as the world currency. Emerging market crisis. After a number of years of relative global economic tranquility, the second half of the 1990s was rocked by a series of currency crises that shook our emerging markets. The devaluation of the Mexican peso in December 1994 served as the hamburger of crises to come. The Asian crisis of July 1997, the Russian rubles collapse in August 1998, and more recently, the fall of the Brazilian real in January 1999 provide us a spectrum of emerging market economic failures, each with its own complex causes and unknown outlooks. These crises also illustrate the growing problem of capital flight and short-run international speculation in currency and securities market. The Asian crisis of 1997, the root of the Asian currency crisis, extended from a fundamental change in the economics of region, the transition of many Asian nations from net exporter to net importers. The most visible roots of the crisis were in the excesses of capital flows into Thailand in 1996, early 1997. As the investment bubble expanded, some participants raised questions about the economic ability to repay the rising debt. The baht came under sudden and severe pressure. The Asian crisis, for it was more than just a currency collapse, had many roots besides the traditional balance of payments difficulties. The complex structure combining government, society, and business throughout the Far East provide a backdrop for understanding the tenuous linkage between business, government, and society. The Russian crisis of 1998, the loss of relatively stable ruble, once considered the cornerstone and symbol of success of President Boris Yeltsin's regime, was a potential death blow to the current Russian government and economic system. If nothing else, Russian borrowers may find themselves persona non grata for years. Brazilian crisis of 1999. Potentially the mildest of the three currency collapse, the Brazilian real's fall in January 1999 was the result of a long-expected correction in ill-conceived currency policy. Because so many major Brazilian firms are publicly traded, this crisis served as an excellent example of how quality markets value firms that are exposed to currency devaluation and vice versa. 154. Attributes of the ideal currency. If the ideal currency exists in today's world, it would possess three attributes. Fixed value. The value of currency would be fixed in relationship to other major currencies so that the trader and investor could be relatively certain of the foreign exchange value of each currency in the present and into the near future. Convertibility. Complete freedom of monetary flows would be allowed so that traders and investors could willingly and easily move funds from one country and currency to another in response to perceived economic opportunities or risk. Independent monetary policy. Domestic monetary and interest rate policies would be set by each individual country so as to pursue desired national economic policies, and especially as they might relate to limiting inflation, combating recession, and fostering prosperity and full employment. Fortunately, these three attributes usually cannot be achieved at the same time. For example, countries whose currencies are pegged to each other are in effect agreeing to both a common inflation rate and a common interest rate policy. If inflation rates differ but the peg, i.e. a fixed exchange rate, is maintained, one country's goods become cheaper in the other countries. This will lead to unemployment in the high inflation country. If one country's interest rates are higher than the other and the peg is maintained, investors will move funds from the low-rate country to high-rate country, creating ever more difficult in maintaining in the peg. 1.6 Summary. The international monetary system can be defined as the structure within which foreign exchange rates are determined, international trade and capital flows are accommodated, and balance of payments adjustment made. It also includes all the instruments and agreements that link together the world's currency money markets, securities, real estate, and commodity markets. The international monetary system has evolved historically from the gold standard 1976 to 1913 of fixed exchange rate to the interwars and World War II 1944 with floating exchange rates to fixed exchange rate 1945 to 1973 under the Bretton Woods Agreement to the present electric currency arrangement na 1973% of fixed floating and managed exchange rate. The key monetary institute is the International Monetary Fund (IMF). It was first proposed in 1944 at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, with the purpose of being a lender of last resort to countries facing temporary balance of payments. Contemporary currency regimes vary from rigidly fixed rates to manage floating to independently floating exchange rate. Several countries such as Argentina and Hong Kong utilize currency boards as a means of fixing their exchange rate. Another alternative being considered is dollarization, which entails the use of the US dollar as the main domestic currency. The argument over the appropriateness of fixed rates versus flexible rates continues as shown by the variety of currency regime in use across the globe. 11 of the 15 member countries of the European Union successfully launched as a single currency effective January 1, 1999, called the euro. This single currency will replace the 11 national currencies of the participant countries completely by the mid-2002. The European Single Bank in Frankfurt, Germany conducts monetary policy for the 11 member countries of the EMU. The devaluation of the Mexican peso in 1994 and the subsequent